Hello and a warm welcome to all of you, our members, donors, and friends who are with us today. This Virtual Views conversation about the aftermath of the explosions that destroyed large parts of Beirut on August 4th is part of an ongoing initiative at the Museum of Modern Art to focus attention on Beirut and what is happening there today. If you are not already a member, please consider joining us at moma.org/join. I'm Glenn Lowry, Director of the Museum of Modern Art, speaking to you live from Midtown Manhattan, and I'm joined by Zeina Arida and Christine Tohmé, two friends and colleagues from Beirut. Zeina is the director of the Sursock Museum, Beirut's foremost museum of modern and contemporary art. Before becoming the director of the Sursock Museum in 2014, she was the director of the Arab Image Foundation, where she was responsible for various artistic and photographic preservation projects in the Middle East. Christine is a curator and the founding director of the Lebanese Association for Plastic Arts, Ashkal Alwan, a nonprofit organization that has initiated and supported contemporary artistic practice since 1994. She began her career as a presenter and DJ for Radio Liban. Both Zeina and Christine are deeply connected to what's going on in Beirut today, and I'm delighted that they are able to join us for this conversation. We will talk for about 30 minutes and then take questions from all of you before concluding with a short excerpt from Qassam Saadab's film, 1958. Before we begin, I want to quickly acknowledge the remarkable creative and audiovisual teams at the Museum of Modern Art who make programs like this possible. Behind the scenes today are Sean Yetter and Natasha Gilberti, Jeffrey Ensel, Hanya Garcia, Zachary Pruitt, and Steve Warrington. We are grateful to them all. Welcome, Christine and Zeina. Let me begin with a simple question. How are you doing and how have you been feeling in these difficult times?
Not so well, I think.
Christine?
I don't know anymore.
Christine, how about you?
Trying our best. I mean, we take it day by day.
I can only imagine how difficult a moment this is for you, but I'm interested in really your experience since the explosion. Zeina, where were you when it happened? What did you see? What did you feel? What did you hear?
Well, I was at the museum, actually. Luckily, the museum had closed its doors 5 minutes before the blast. And I was still there in the office spaces with 3 colleagues. And then, I mean, we were lucky. I mean, I think we were saved by my war experience, which made me move away from the windows and ask my colleagues to move away when I heard a strange noise that I found threatening, that preceded actually the first of the 2 explosions. And then a huge blast pushed us in the staircase, and then we heard all the windows of the museum collapsing and breaking. And then we stood for 5 minutes in the staircase waiting because we did not know what was happening. So we didn't know if it was, airplane red or what. So.
Christine, what about you? Where were you when the blast occurred?
I was actually in Ashkal Alwan. I was doing a Zoom meeting with a group of friends. We had the meeting with the FFAI, and actually the whole school started trembling, and I felt it was like going back and forth. And I said, guys, sorry, I need to go because the glass was, everything was being shattered in front of me, and I thought it was an earthquake. And I said, sorry, I have to leave. And I actually left. And then Safwan, who's part of the team, was with me. He told me, no, there's an assassination, Christine. And then, it took another 15 minutes when we knew that it was the blast. And, it was something that I think every single Lebanese person has been shook and hurt by this. Even if you're not hurt physically, you're hurt all over. And I think this is something that have changed historically what we live. And It's the third biggest, strongest explosion in the world.
I know that all of us have friends who were either hurt, seriously hurt, among the several 100,000 that were wounded, and I'm sure that you must have friends and colleagues who died in the blast as well, because several hundred people died when all of that ammonium nitrate exploded. But for those who are not in Lebanon at the time, maybe Zeina, you could give us a sense of what the impact was physically at the Sursock Museum, and perhaps talk a little bit about other cultural centers that were affected. And then we'll come back to you, Christine, to talk a little bit about what's going on at Ashkal Alwan. So Zeina.
Well, the Sursock Museum is located 800 meters away from the explosion site, from the port, and which I didn't know at all. The museum is located on a hill really facing the port. So it was very badly damaged, as all the area between the port. So this is Marem Khail, Jemeze, Sursock, Marem Oula. And this is the area where you have the biggest concentration of heritage buildings, cafes, creative spaces, art galleries, a few other museums as well. This is where we hang out in the evening, bars, restaurants. This is really the core of, the life in Beirut. So a big part of the city was actually destroyed. More than 60,000 households or office spaces were destroyed by the blasts. It's a huge, huge damage.
You want to take us inside the Sursock Museum for a moment and just give us a sense of really how devastating this was. And I think it's also important to remember that the Sursock Museum had only been open for about 5 years after a huge renovation, a renovation that produced one of the most beautiful museums anywhere in the Middle East, if not the world. So I have some really deep emotional bonds to the museum that was there.
Yes, the Sursock Museum is housed in a mansion that was built by Nicolas Sursock in 1912. So it has like a Venetian Ottoman influence in its architecture. And we can see, I mean, the slides, let's look at slides 5, 6, which show the first floor of the historical building of the museum. As you mentioned, the museum went through a major renovation. I should mention that the museum initially opened in 1961. What we see here is the Salon Arabe, so where like Nicolas Sursock used to greet its guests. And this is like many other houses from the period. It's a space that has handwood carved wooden panels that were brought from Syria. This museum and house went through, I think, 2 world wars, a civil war, like 15 years civil war in Lebanon, a few Israeli bombing, and I mean, none of these major events had caused damage like this blast, of course. So now we unfortunately lost original fixtures, the original tainted glass that we see here, doors that were preserved since the building of this mansion, all the windows, the tainted windows that became the landmark of the museum. We can see them in slide number 3. And 4, which yes, exactly. You see here, I mean, how the building was completely open to the sky in a few seconds due to the blast. So of course we had exhibitions in the spaces. I mean, due to the COVID-19 and to the different closures that the museum went through, our whole programming was very messed up. And so we had only 2 exhibitions, one on the first floor that we see here, which was an exhibition of pastel by Georges de Woodcorn, a Lebanese modern artist. And on the second floor, we had the permanent collection. We can see images in Wait, first we can look at the surveillance video of like the number 7 and 8, which also show how the tainted glass was completely blown away with the explosion. We were just behind this actually wall. Luckily, no one was in the building, as I said before. But as you mentioned, the museum, I mean, we have the feeling that we just finished renovating and building this museum. So, and I mean, I was hired almost 2 years before the reopening of the museum, as well as my team. And we really had the feeling that 5 years, not even 5, 7 years of work were completely destroyed in a few seconds. Yeah, this is very difficult to witness. It took us time to understand, you know, of course, I thought that, you know, I was thinking, why are they bombing Sursock? Why is Sursock the target? Like many friends and colleagues, everyone thought that the place where they were was the target of the explosion because it was so strong. And in a way, after we knew, you know, we learned what had happened, it's as if the 1st of August blast was the physical manifestation of years of corruption and incompetence. And this is really the most difficult, part to accept. It's very difficult to accept, actually.
Thank you. Thank you, Zeina. Christine, what has been the impact on the artistic community? I mean, Ashkal Alwan is such an important hub in the conversation among artists, not just in Beirut, but across the entire Middle East. How have artists responded? What about artist studios? Are people back up in practice? Take us on the ground from the point of view of the artists who so many of us admire and whose work is so important.
I mean, I would like to go back in time and say, like, when we had homeworks programmed on the 17th of October, this is the building of Ashkal Alwan. It's the PHA Association building, and we are located on the first floor. We've been here for 9 years. It's a great space, 2,000 square meters that has around 27 studios, a library that hosts more than 5,000 catalogs, facilities of editing suites, you know, and many other facilities for artists. But to put this on the side, I'd like to go back in time and talk about the 17th of October revolution, where, you know, it was, of course, the opening night of homeworks, and the revolution started, which is the protests in Beirut started on the 17th of October, and we had to indefinitely postpone homeworks, which was a big, big blow and not a small feat for 2 years and a half of preparations. And also to understand that this is the structure that we've been working with, that this is Jumana and Haig's exhibition in the building itself. Every single homeworks has been postponed actually, except one, which is in 2010, which was not postponed because of a political event, but there was the volcano ashes. So this is a structure that we've been living with, but I also want to say that since the 17th of October, Lebanese people, institutions, all institutions in Lebanon are kind of, you know, paralyzed, crippled by the events that actually, as Zeina said, are the result of corruption, incompetence, and warlords that are led by sectarianism and are led by external forces. So actually, I have to tell you, and this is what my mother tells me all the time, we're going on a ride on a plane and we don't know this free fall where this airplane will crash. So we've been taken as hostages. Let's put it this way. So these hostages are as well artists. These artists, you have to know that they're like all of us, they're confused, we've lost our livelihood, we've lost our systems of care and solidarity, we lost our friendships. We are in a state of isolation. We are in a state of brain drain. Everybody is leaving the country. So many people are leaving, especially people with families, and you would understand this very well. And this state of isolation has been coupled with the 17th of October and the banking capital control, where the Lebanese banks, coupled with the government, has actually confiscated all of our money. So thinking about that, thinking about the work of artists who cannot produce, thinking about the work of associations where we are incapable to meet financial obligations, payment of salaries, contractual fees, rents, so on and so forth. This put us in a state where, I would invite you, Glenn, but I cannot pay you a fee. Of course, we have a constellation of artists all over the world. We are connected with this collectivity of friends, and this is what Ashkal Alwan is about, this collectivity. But in a way, it is also on the security level, it's not safe. So if you want to talk about the protests, people were killed, people were shot in the eyes, people were detained, queer people were attacked, transgender people were attacked, domestic workers were attacked. And I think all of that is part of what we do. This is the civic sphere that I'm talking about. And this is the civic sphere where all of these fanatics and fundamentalists, I think, are holding the country now. Each one is only caring for their own bank accounts abroad, outside of Lebanon. That was smuggled 1 year before the revolution. All of their money was smuggled. And we are paying the money. All of these small accounts, people with small accounts, have been usurped of their livelihood, feeding their children, taking care of themselves. This is where we are today. And this is what the artists are dealing with. The artists, some of them are leaving. And the people who have possibilities with second nationalities are leaving. Who's staying in town are the artists who are young and have no possibility to leave. And especially that we cannot do any transfers to outside Lebanon to universities. So you will have a whole generation that will be ripped of every single basic need, which is education. So they're gonna be stripped out of this right to educate our children. This is one thing. Second, as I said before, we are not capable of taking out of the bank more than $2,000. $2,000, the rate of the dollar is 4,000 lira a day, depending on the rate of the day. And the hyperinflation is the dollar is around close to 10,000 lira. So this is where we are. The country, they did not accept to do any kind of reconciliation with what's going on because they want to kind of preserve and protect their right, because they have kind of stole so much that if one of them is kind of revealed, which is a domino effect, they will all be revealed. It's a typical situation of any fascist country. And these religious representations that are ruling us, we just want to tell them, we are here. They are going to leave. We are staying here, and we will strip them of everything. It will take some time, but we are staying here. And all our friends, our lovers, our queer friends, our domestic workers, our people of color will stay, and they will leave. And we will make sure to make them leave. So this is what we are working for. And I think the artist is part of what's happening here, of the institutions. All of the institutions in Lebanon have been hard hit. And I think at the moment now, it's not about Ashkal Alwan or Sursock, it's about a whole landscape. It's about all of us coming together and thinking of what we're gonna do, how we're gonna respond to such a kind of a trauma, life trauma experience, how can we change that into something that will stay with us, because traumas do not go, but make it positive, and put together a program that could be of strength and of vitality to answer the questions, to be able to create another civic sphere again. But this will be very difficult. And we don't want to talk about resilience anymore because we're really tired as human beings. So this landscape has to come together with a programmation that might take another 2 years to come up with a programmation. But this programmation also has to deal with freedom of expression, because I expect many activists and artists and many thinkers will be attacked very soon. Because, you know, as we say, when somebody is in the corner, they're gonna hit you bad. So I think it's all about this collectivity now. I don't think it's about an artist or a cultural thinker or an activist. It's all of us together, people living in Beirut from all walks of life, coming together to think. If we don't think together to address the volume of such a catastrophe, and maybe I tell you, I don't know, 17th of October is in 10 days. We will take again to the streets, but I don't know what's gonna happen again. We're fine today talking to you, Glenn, but I don't know what's gonna happen again. It's very precarious, and that's it. It's very precarious. And the programmation we're gonna do maybe will not be able to do it. And that's where, you know, this is where they left us with no option. And this is where I say we are hijacked and taken hostage on a plane where the free fall is very soon. When they take all the support on all basic material, we will not be able to buy fuel anymore for our cars.
Thank you, Christine. Zeina, is there a way forward? Are there things that either at a very granular level that you're doing at Sursock or the other organizations that you're involved in that help stabilize what's obviously an incredibly unstable situation? What's the next move?
I mean, there is a need of rebuilding, whatever the situation is, and I totally agree with what Christine said, but we are in a situation where we need to rebuild. There are 300,000 people who were displaced from their homes. There is a number of at least 600 historical buildings that were like damaged. Some of them are at risk of collapse, at least 100 buildings. And we are lucky that it's not raining yet, but soon rain will come. So we also need to think about, you know, I mean, we need to raise funds. This is what's happening. There are a few efforts. Of course, after the explosion happened, we had a lot of international solidarity that was expressed, you know, to Beirutis in general, to the like heritage and cultural sector. But until now, there is not much that is concrete. At Sursock, we have started receiving support. We still need to raise funds, but we are part of a whole ecosystem, and we need to rebuild these like spaces and houses. And I mean, we need to struggle on all levels, frankly. And due to the financial situation, you cannot even buy glass to replace your windows. You have to buy glass, pay them in fresh dollars, and you don't have these fresh dollars. So the funding has to come from outside Lebanon. Otherwise, no one is able to rebuild. And I mean, the country is transforming into a giant NGO. So NGOs have proven again to be the ones really playing the role of the state, and the civil society is doing. The day after the blast, you had young people everywhere in the city, cleaning the streets, helping wherever they could. You know, those who used to party in these bars were the first ones to be in the Jemaise street in Mar Mikhail to help. So somehow, how long can we you know, can we sustain as a civil society doing the job of the state, which is inexistent? And I mean, we have proven to be able to rule this country, and we really need something major. We thought that actually the explosion was the major event that was going to really change things, but actually we didn't have one official mourning day announced. No officials visited the site of the explosion. For instance, in the case of Sursock, which is probably the most, let's say, visible, you know, art museum or space, we didn't have any phone call from the Ministry of Culture, nor a visit. I mean, so somehow it is maybe the 17th of October will reactivate something, but I don't know. We thought that the explosion, the size of the strength of the explosion and the damage should have activated something which was not yet.
I know many who are no doubt listening today wonder how they can help. Are there ways to be supportive? Are there things that those of us who are lucky enough not to be in Lebanon right now, whatever our problems might be, are there things we can do to be helpful? Are there places that one can send money? Are there organizations that are on the ground, grassroots, that are trying to do things?
Yeah, there is a number. I mean, there is a lot of really very serious initiatives in terms of art and culture. There is AFAC and Mawrid Sakafe that set a solidarity fund, which so is gathering fund to support artists, studios, houses, but also cultural institutions and the creative industry more generally. There is a number of organizations such as, you know, of course, the Red Cross, Impact Lebanon. Everyone is fundraising. There is an initiative that's called Beirut Heritage Initiative, that is a coalition of 5 nonprofits trying to work in the direction of restoring and preserving what is left in terms of built heritage. They will launch their campaign in 10 days officially. Christine, you might have other suggestions.
We want people to visit us. It's very important that we continue this exchange, and this comes out of a question like, will we be able again to congregate the way we congregated when Homeworks was on the 17th of October, and there were around 500 people from all over the world, which they had to fly 2 days later. But this is not only related to Lebanon, it's related to the whole world. And this will actually create a lot of isolation for many arts institutions in the world. This physical encounter, you know, this congregation together is very important. And we've been actually deprived of this for at least 1 year now. At least COVID-19 is at its peak in Lebanon. We are hoping in March, even if we start with small numbers, inviting people, 10 people to be working together in a workshop, of course, with all the social distancing and all of that, but this is part also of our resistance. This is the kind of resistance that we have to be involved again in. And actually what happened is after, you know, August 4, we started fostering a network of care, opening our studios to artists, collectives, and cultural workers. We're helping literally artists with their portfolios and resumes. We're guiding artists to programs internationally, study programs. Unfortunately, we are helping artists to leave, but this is what they need at the moment. This is what they need. They need this guidance. And I think in a couple of years, I am hoping that they will come back. And if they're not going to come back, they will work from wherever they are. We're locating scholarships for artists and connecting them with benefactors, whether in Lebanon or outside Lebanon. This is what we're doing now. HWP. We're hoping, if things are not okay, we start with online programming, but then we're starting with the homeworks, you know, which every year we take 10 to 18 fellows. This year it's going to be open, and we're going to take students. There will be only presenting your resume to know who we're encountering as a fellow or a student. And it will be, all of Ashkal Alwan will be starting to give skill-based workshops and office hours. So in addition to homework, skills-based workshops, we're gonna do an audiovisual editing suite that will have around 5 stations: ceramics and pottery and wheel station, printing and laser cutting, carpet weaving, and woodwork. Each one of these stations will be run by an artist. And then Office Hours is a program that we created with the curricular committee. Is a new program that will have, every 2 weeks, we'll have an artist to meet artists and give them feedback on their work. And these programs are not only for fellow artists who are part of the program. These programs are open to everybody. We are doing that to help artists strengthen their work, and for people who are not going to be working in art but studying editing or color correction or sound design, is to help them to locate more job opportunities. I think this is our job now, is to be able to help those people who are left behind, who are the youngish, and who will need a lot of help because there will be no money. There will be a lot of people who are leaving. Universities will be struggling, and of course will cancel many workshops that they used to do because simply there will not be enough registration. So this is a period that will take a lot of us, a lot of dedication, and a lot of care. And I am hoping that each one of us will give what they could at this point, and we will see. I'm still hopeful. I'm still hopeful that with the help of my colleagues from Sursock or Beirut Art Center or Metropolis Art Cinema or the Arab Image Foundation or AFAQ or you know, all of Zuqaq, all of these institutions, that we will work together, and this collectivity is the one that will keep us going. I don't promise anything. I don't know what, I'm not pretending that I know what's gonna happen. I just know that I'm taking day by day, and I will continue working no matter what happens.
We have a number of live questions that have come in, and let me turn to Zeina with the first one. Nomi Lisi Petrikovitz asks whether Beirut museums or even Lebanese museums had shelters where they could protect the art. How much art was destroyed? Is there any sense now of the scale, not just of the physical damage to buildings, but the damage to works of art themselves across Beirut?
I have to mention that Beirut, unlike many other cities with such a vibrant art scene, has very few museums and only one art museum, which is Sursock Museum. There are other museums, like more historical, that were also damaged by the blast. I can mention the Archaeological Museum of AUB that had a major vitrine with very old pieces that were damaged. And some other art spaces that didn't have really damage in collections or artworks. At Sursock, we have 57 artworks that were damaged among the 130 that were on display. We already started a campaign of dusting because the thin dust from the blast with the chemicals, which, I mean, with the composition that we don't know, came into storage as well. We are lucky that the storage of the artworks, the main storage spaces, are in the basement 3. So only the works that were on display were damaged. But we have to dust the whole archive collection and artworks. Most of the museums, I mean, the Archaeological Museum, the National Museum of Beirut has its storage also underground. So most of the museums have storage in basements. But as I said, there are not so many museums in Beirut.
I'm interested in how architects are beginning to, if architects, in fact, in Beirut, which has such an extraordinary group of highly talented architects, are people beginning to think about ways to rebuild the city, or is the crisis and the corruption so great that it's impossible to imagine a rethinking of the city?
I mean, no, there have been from day one, there have been initiatives like you have a group of 40 architects who are mainly architectes du patrimoine, who have been assessing the damage, really working in like mapping all the buildings, trying to put priorities. The Directorate of Antiquities have also worked on mapping. Now there is a real need of finding solutions in order to start like reinforcing the structure of these buildings. It's very important before the rain season. Otherwise, we will have even much more destruction. This is what's happening. Architects have been very present. There's a number of volunteers who are helping with built heritage, but also like modern architecture. Trying to find solutions. We need to have people coming back to their houses, to their homes. And so architects with some nonprofits are working in that direction, raising money to support, rehousing of these displaced people.
Tootsie Warhol writes, in what concrete way can American artists and patrons support culture in Lebanon? Beyond just financial support, are there other things that we can do collectively that are beneficial and that can be meaningful to what's happening in Beirut? Christine.
As I said, come visit us. It's very important. That's we're protected and with our friends, but also financial support is very important at the moment for all of us, especially that we need to have money coming from abroad. To be that crude, some people are carrying dollars in the bags, getting them to Beirut. So this is very important at this point. After that, we need people at least to come and be part of what we're doing in the School of Ashkal Alwan, to give workshops, to work with artists, all kind of sorts of support, be it, artistic, but also to have conversations. That's very important. This is what I think is at the heart of what we do, is to be able to have these conversations, to be able to continue what we're doing. And I think this isolation that I talk about is not only in Lebanon. I think this isolation is everywhere in the world. We had to postpone so many programs this year after homeworks, and then the clamping down on the activists and the protesters in the streets. We had to lock down in March, on the 12th of March. We have launched Perpetual Postponement, which is our new publication program. And we had to postpone it again. We had Ashra, which was working for 2.5 years. We stopped it. Every 2 months, we have to rethink what we're doing. And we're so skeptical of ourselves that is what we're doing makes sense now? And you feel this guilt that it's never enough. And you feel that, okay, maybe it's a moment where I have to be silent because I don't have an answer for anything. But at this point, I think I am, I have to say, very carefully rethinking, because we have to continue. We cannot stop, because if we stop, everyone in their own field, whether you're an artist or you're a plumber or a doctor or an architect, we need to continue. Otherwise, it's suicide, more than the suicidal situation in this country. But we also have to be careful, how do we continue? Because I again repeat, without any collectivity, without all of these institutions that I mentioned, without the artists, because the artists, the activists, all of these people who have been working so hard and have been killed and assassinated, we have to mention their names and we have to remember them. And we have to remember the people who died in the explosion, whether those people who helped us, like Firas, who actually hung all our work, or Gaia Fudulyan, who died from Leticia Gallery, or Firas, who died from Agial Gallery. These are the people that are the most important for us at the moment. And I think we cannot really segregate between being an artist or a human being at the moment. We have to actually think of how we could really fight these radicals by continuing to fight them and by telling them, you know, you will take your time, but at the end, by being, you know, understanding that these corrupt people and the people who have been stealing our money for the past 30 years, we will have to continue doing, you know, pages on their corruption. We'll have to keep putting their stories everywhere. We'll have to put their names everywhere because they have destroyed our lives, because they have made our children leave the country. And this is every one of us who's thinking at the moment. So I think, you know, at the moment, it's not about talking about art, it's talking about a whole country that has lost its livelihood. And this livelihood starts from people who are alive. And everything matters in this country. Arts institutions, plumbing houses, bars, heritage houses, our cats, our plants, everything matters. So this is what I want to say at the moment, that really it's not easy to deal with what we're dealing, but hopefully we will think together and maybe come up with a solution, although not a solution, a treatment of the cancer, which is radicalism, which is backed by fundamental countries outside Lebanon, with these beards that are full of fleas. We will hopefully have conversations that will be productive, hopefully.
Zeina, I'm interested in just the texture of life on the ground. You know, Christine talks powerfully about how impacted everyone is and how complicated things are, and the ways in which the normal orders of civil society have frayed. But what's it like on the ground? You go out to dinner? Are there bars that are open? Are there shops? Or is just everything closed down at this point?
You know, it's no. I mean, things are, some bars probably reopened, but I didn't step into a bar or a restaurant since the blast, I have to say. I mean, streets are empty starting 6 p.m. Even before, we used to have a lot of, you know, huge traffic jams in Beirut. It is not the case anymore. We are in a country now that is not functioning anymore. We have had a garbage crisis that started in 2015 and that has not improved. On the contrary, it's as if suddenly nothing can function anymore. It's as if suddenly everything has, you know, is failed. So we are not in a normal, we are not back to a normal situation. This is what people are used to. You know, when we talk about Beirut and Lebanon, this is the resilience that Christine talked about. We are not there anymore because really the city has changed completely. People are still under shock. We still have sleep problems. You know, this is not an event that can be, I mean, there's a lot that there will need years and years to go back to, not even to go back to what Beirut was, but everything has changed in the city and in the country. Unfortunately, we have to face this reality. We cannot pretend anymore. We, of course, are like many people around us, not only in the art, we have to go on, we have to rebuild, we have to think about, you know, what we're gonna do, how we're gonna work. But at the same time, we don't know what is the future. We don't know what is expecting us in a month, in a day, in a week. So it is a very difficult, and I mean, it's not only Lebanon that is in such a difficult situation. The whole world is going through this, you know, pandemic. It's of course different, different levels, but yeah, I think it's not, no, the feel is, it's sad. Beirut is sad. It's dark, it's sad, it smells bad.
So we have two live questions. They're interrelated. Fatima Hijazi asks, can professionals from outside Lebanon participate in workshops to share their skills and help emerging artists and the creative community? And Russell Ward Studio asks, since COVID-19 requires people to stay in, are there opportunities for online residencies and study programs with Ashkal Alwan? And so if we put those two questions together, what kinds of programs are capable of being realized today that can bring people from different communities together when they can't travel to Beirut?
I mean, in the case of Sursock, we have some, exhibitions, virtual exhibitions online. We were lucky to have shot the main building of the museum 2 months before the blast. And, we launched it 2 weeks after. We are working on a long-term project as to share the resources of the museum, the archive that the museum have been collecting for the past 6 years, artist folders, exhibition histories, etc. This will take like 3 years from now. I think that yes, as a collective, we need to think about it. But again, as Christine was saying, we feel very isolated. We used to bump into each other's at openings, at talks, at, and I don't see anyone anymore, apart from my direct colleagues and really close friends. I don't know what about you, Christine. We miss this physical experience of meeting with people.
We have to do a party soon.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll come and join you.
Yeah, but I have to talk about something also here about online learning, which online courses, which we continued with HWP last March. I think really it's not the same. We have to understand internationally, and some universities in the world are trying to resort to online teaching. This is something else. We've been using it for the past year. It helps with whatever we are dealing with at the moment. But how can you do a group critique when you are online? How do you do a critique of painting? How do you do a critique of sculpture when you're online? I think this is a shortcoming, and we really have to all collectively work internationally, because I feel there's a trend that universities think of their campuses and thinking of online as a long-term. I think this is something that we have to be very careful with. We are hoping that we start in January HWP. We're hoping and if we cannot, of course, and this is before the vaccination will come out, and of course it will not reach this part of the world before a month from now. We're hoping that in April we will have physical classes. This is a hope. I don't want to sound also optimistically naive, but we're hoping and working towards that, even if we're going to dwindle the number of people who are going to be in the workshops. But Glenn, I also want to tell you something about the art scene. Even everything infrastructurally has been hit really hard. If you think about all the galleries also that has been hit hard. So everything here is almost like every time we go back to the office, you start thinking about your DNA. You think that Ashkal Alwan is a new Ashkal Alwan. You think that the team is new. You think that everything that you've been working on is something that doesn't work anymore. So it's this perpetual revisiting that, is also positive in a way, but it's also very tiring in a sense that because we are facing, this is something bigger than Lebanon. What's happening in Lebanon is like what happened in Athens. It's what's happened in Hong Kong, what's happened in Buenos Aires, what happened, in many places of the world. It's just that we are a fragile country with dictator and fascists who are taking us again as hostages. And it's a very small country with very small resources. That's why everything is outside and our intestines are showing to the whole world, just because, you know, it's simply, you know, at a point where these people do not care about all of the Lebanese population. They don't care. And I would say here that nobody knows what's going to happen. Let's see. I mean, the American election. And I hope that, you know, Mr. Trump gets better soon, but I hope he will not be re-elected. And, you know, we'll see how things will move and take it from there.
We have time for a final question, and want to draw on one that Leah Dickerman, who is at the Museum of Modern Art, head of digital content and strategy, asked, and it's really touches on something both of you referred to. It has to do with what artists today in Lebanon, are they free to do whatever they want? Are they afraid of censorship? You mentioned, Christine, about people being beaten up and attacked. What sense of personal freedom exists today for artists who are, you know, really doing difficult work?
These are the people who are doing political work. They are being beaten up. Their eyes are pierced. They are shot in their eyes directly, in their faces. This is what's happening. And I think censorship issues, yes, when an artist will bring something that will actually bother the authorities, they will clamp on them. This is not a new practice for Lebanon.
And when you say that, does that mean they'll end up in jail? Does it, what?
No, they'll send people to your house. They'll call you on the phone. They'll chase your friends, send them messages, and sometimes they could detain you and put you in the jail. Now there are people who are taken to the jail, activists who were part of the protest just for the fact that they were participating in the protests. These are the court cases that have been going on for a couple of months. Activists are being asked to go to court cases.
A final word from you, Zeina, on the state of Beirut and Lebanon and what people in the cultural community are contending with.
What is the question?
Sorry, I wondered if you had a final word about what you and your friends are, you know, contending with. Are you ready for October 17th? Will you be out on the street?
Yes, of course, I'll be out on the street. Like last year, I was out on the street, but yes, of course, we'll be out on the street, even if we have less hope than a year ago, because a year ago, we really thought that we were gonna, you know, change things, actually. Maybe we will. I need to be more hopeful today. And again, it depends on the days. Some days I'm very desperate. Some days I'm very like courageous, and I think that we will change this country. I don't know. It's very, you know, it's as Christine said, take it day by day. But on the 17th of October, we all need to be in the street. But not only on that day, we really need to have some change, major change in the country.
Well, we will remain hopeful with you. Thank you all for joining us today. If you weren't able to catch the entire show live, this video will be up on MoMA.org for viewing immediately after our live stream ends. We've had viewers tune in from all over the world. People are joining us right now from Hawthorne, New Jersey, Brooklyn, New York, Beirut, Manhattan, throughout Lebanon, Gouda in the Netherlands, and I'm sure I'm leaving many places out. Remember, you can stay up to date with everything that is happening at the museum, on magazine, and at MoMA.org, where you will find much more content about Beirut and links to charities and arts organizations in Beirut. We are going to conclude today with a brief excerpt from Ghassan Salad's 2009 film, 1958. The woman you will see in Ghassan's film is his mother, who just passed away. But before we begin the film, let me say once again to Zeina and Christine how grateful we are to you for sharing your time, your thoughts, and your ideas with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for the whole team for all their work. It was great.
وبعد مدة طويلة في شرب كاس الوصال لقيت حبيبته الجميلة ساقت عليه الدلال